In the heart of the Middle East lies a nation that has defied the world as greatest superpower for over 4 decades. Today, Iran stands as America's most persistent adversary, but this wasn't always the case. Just 50 years ago, Iran was one of America's closest allies in the region, ruled by a Shah who threw the most expensive party in human history while his people starved. The story of how this dramatic transformation occurred is one of revolution, betrayal, and the unintended consequences of foreign interference. To understand why Iran and America became bitter enemies, we must journey back to a time when the world was engulfed in its greatest conflict and every nation faced a choice that would define their future for generations to come. The year was 1941, and World War II had divided the globe into 2 camps. Nations were forced to choose sides between the British Empire and Adolf Hitler's Germany. While most countries aligned with Britain and the Allies, Iran's ruler, Reza Shah Pahlavi, made a fateful decision that would echo through history. He chose to support Nazi Germany. This alliance between Iran and Germany sent shockwaves through the British establishment. Iran's strategic location and vast oil reserves made it too valuable to leave in enemy hands. The British response was swift and devastating. They invaded Iran from multiple directions, overwhelming the Iranian military with their superior forces and technology. Faced with complete defeat, Reza Shah did what many rulers before him had done when confronted with overwhelming power. He surrendered. But the British had no intention of simply accepting his capitulation. They demanded a price that would reshape Iran's destiny. Reza Shah must abdicate in favor of his 22-year-old son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The young prince was everything the British could have hoped for in a puppet ruler. Unlike his father, who had maintained some degree of independence, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was completely enamored with Western culture and values. He dreamed of transforming Iran into a modern secular state that would mirror the Western nations he so admired. From the moment he ascended to the throne, the new Shah embarked on an ambitious campaign to westernize Iran. His vision was radical and uncompromising. He wanted Iranians to dress like Westerners, party like Westerners, and abandon the Islamic traditions that had defined their culture for over a millennium. The Shah's policy struck at the very heart of Iranian society. He banned the wearing of hijabs, forcing women to abandon traditional Islamic dress codes. Mosques and religious schools were shuttered across the country, their doors sealed by government decree. Islamic scholars, the traditional guardians of Iranian culture and law, found themselves targets of a systematic crackdown. Many were arrested, imprisoned, or forced into exile. In place of Islamic institutions, the Shah promoted Western entertainment and lifestyle. Music, dancing, and alcohol consumption were not just permitted, but actively encouraged. The transformation was so complete that Iran, a nation that had been Islamic for over 1,000 years, began exporting alcohol to other countries. The irony was staggering. An Islamic nation had become a supplier of forbidden substances to the world. The Shah's westernization campaign reached absurd heights when he attempted to export his vision beyond Iran's borders. During a meeting with King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, the Shah boldly suggested that the Saudi monarch should also liberalize his kingdom and abandon traditional Islamic governance. King Faisal firmly rejected this proposal, maintaining Saudi Arabia's commitment to Islamic principles. In a twist of historical irony, it is now Saudi Arabia that urges Iran to become more liberal, while Iran steadfastly refuses. The Shah's aggressive secularization policies inevitably generated resistance. Among Iran's religious establishment, anger and resentment were building toward their ruler's systematic destruction of Islamic institutions. The opposition centered around mosques and religious schools, where brave clerics began delivering sermons criticizing the Shah's policies. Among these religious leaders, one figure stood out for his eloquence, courage, and unwavering opposition to the regime: Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. This elderly cleric possessed a rare combination of religious authority and political acumen that made him extraordinarily dangerous to the Shah's rule. Khomeini's sermons resonated deeply with ordinary Iranians who felt alienated by their ruler's foreign-imposed lifestyle. His message was simple but powerful. The Shah had betrayed Iran's Islamic identity and must be removed from power. As Khomeini's influence grew, his followers began organizing protests and spreading his message throughout the country. The Shah, recognizing the threat posed by this charismatic cleric, made a decision that would prove to be one of his greatest mistakes. In 1964, he ordered Khomeini's arrest and subsequent exile from Iran. The Ayatollah was forced to leave his homeland and eventually settled in Iraq, where he would spend the next 14 years plotting his return to power. Interestingly, a young Iraqi leader named Saddam Hussein was carefully monitoring Khomeini's activities during this period. Even then, Saddam recognized the potential threat posed by the exiled Iranian cleric. He reportedly offered to assassinate Khomeini for the Shah, but the Iranian ruler dismissed the suggestion, famously declaring that, "This old man Khomeini cannot harm me." This underestimation would prove to be catastrophically wrong. Despite being physically removed from Iran, Khomeini refused to abandon his mission to overthrow the Shah. From his exile in Iraq, he developed an innovative method of maintaining contact with his supporters: audio cassettes. Khomeini would record lengthy sermons and political speeches, which were then smuggled into Iran through an underground network of supporters. These cassettes were copied and distributed throughout the country, creating a parallel communication system that the Shah's secret police struggled to control. The impact of these recordings was extraordinary. Iranians who had never seen Khomeini in person became devoted followers after listening to his passionate denunciations of the Shah's regime. The cassettes transformed the exiled cleric into a household name and the unofficial leader of Iran's opposition movement. While this underground resistance was growing stronger, the Shah remained confident in his power. After all, he commanded one of the world's most formidable military forces and enjoyed the unwavering support of the United States, the world's dominant superpower. What could an elderly exile possibly do against such overwhelming advantages? At the height of his power, the Shah made a decision that would ultimately contribute to his downfall. In 1971, he announced plans to celebrate the 2500th anniversary of the Persian Empire with a festival at Persepolis, the ancient capital of the Persian kings. The Shah intended to host what would become the most expensive party in human history, a 3-day extravaganza that would showcase Iran's wealth and power to the world. The preparations were staggering in their scope and cost. A temporary city was constructed in the desert near Persepolis, complete with luxury accommodations for the distinguished guests. The Shah imported 600 limousines to transport his visitors and commissioned meals to be served on golden plates. The total cost was estimated at over $100 million in 1971 currency, equivalent to hundreds of millions today. The centerpiece of the celebration was a ceremony where the Shah, seated on a golden throne, declared himself the heir to the great Persian emperors of antiquity. He spoke of reviving the glorious Persian Empire that had once stretched from India to Greece, deliberately invoking memories of the pre-Islamic era that had been conquered by Muslim armies in the 7th century. While the Shah celebrated in unprecedented luxury, ordinary Iranians struggled with poverty and economic hardship. The stark contrast between the golden plates at Persepolis and the empty tables in Iranian homes was not lost on the population. Many began to see their ruler as completely disconnected from their daily struggles and concerns. This growing resentment provided fertile ground for Khomeini's message. In his cassette recordings, the exiled Ayatollah began comparing the Shah to Yazid, the Umayyad caliph who killed the Prophet Muhammad's grandson Hussein at the Battle of Karbala. This comparison was particularly powerful for Iran's Shia Muslim population, who viewed Yazid as the ultimate symbol of tyrannical rule. As economic conditions worsened and the Shah's extravagance became more apparent, support for Khomeini's movement expanded beyond religious circles. Secular intellectuals, students, and even members of the middle class began to view the elderly cleric as a preferable alternative to their current ruler. The Shah, finally recognizing the growing threat to his rule, turned to his most reliable ally for help, the United States. America had supported his father's Safaur and had been instrumental in maintaining the Pahlavi dynasty's control over Iran. Surely, the Shah reasoned, his American allies would not abandon him in his hour of need. The Shah's confidence in American support was not unreasonable. For decades, Iran had been one of America's most reliable allies in the Middle East. The country served as a buffer against Soviet expansion and provided stable access to oil resources. American advisors had helped modernize Iran's military, and the two nations maintained extensive economic and political ties. However, by the late 1970s, the political landscape in Washington had changed dramatically. President Jimmy Carter had made human rights a centerpiece of his foreign policy, and the Shah's increasingly repressive tactics had become an embarrassment to his American supporters. When the Shah appealed for help in suppressing the growing opposition movement, he received a shocking response. In a series of high-level meetings, American officials made it clear that they would not intervene to save his regime. The message was unmistakable. The Shah was on his own. This abandonment by his closest ally was the final blow to the Shah's confidence. In January 1979, realizing that his position had become untenable, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi fled Iran, never to return. His departure created a power vacuum that Khomeini supporters were ready to fill. News of the Shah's flight spread quickly throughout Iran and reached Khomeini in his Iraqi exile. After 14 years of separation from his homeland, the Ayatollah prepared for a return that would reshape not just Iran, but the entire Middle East. On February 1, 1979, Khomeini's airplane touched down at Tehran's airport to scenes of unprecedented celebration. An estimated 7 million people lined the streets to welcome their returning leader, a gathering so large it set a world record for the largest political demonstration in history. The moment Khomeini set foot on Iranian soil, the country's relationship with the outside world changed forever. For the first time, chants of death to America and death to Israel echoed through the streets of Tehran. The alliance between Iran and the United States, which had lasted for nearly 4 decades, was officially over. The new Iranian regime wasted little time in demonstrating its hostility toward its former American allies. On November 4, 1979, Iranian students stormed the American embassy in Tehran, taking 52 American diplomats and citizens hostage. Khomeini personally endorsed this action, declaring that the hostages would not be released until the United States returned the exiled Shah to face trial in Iran. For 444 days, the crisis dominated international headlines and poisoned relations between the two countries beyond repair. The hostage crisis marked the beginning of a confrontation that would define Middle Eastern geopolitics for decades to come. America's humiliation at the hands of a revolutionary regime it had once supported created lasting resentment in Washington, while Iran's successful defiance of American power became a source of national pride and regional influence. Just as Khomeini was consolidating power in Iran, a new threat emerged from an unexpected source. In September 1980, Iraq's Saddam Hussein, the same leader who had once offered to assassinate Khomeini, launched a full-scale invasion of Iran. Saddam's decision was influenced by several factors. He feared that Iran's revolution might inspire similar uprisings among Iraq's Shia population. He wanted to seize Iran's oil-rich territories, and he believed that the revolutionary chaos would make Iran an easy target. He was wrong. Despite being isolated internationally and facing a better-equipped enemy, Iran's revolutionary forces fought with remarkable determination. The 8-year Iran-Iraq War became one of the most brutal conflicts of the 20th century, with over 1 million casualties on both sides. While Iraq received weapons and assistance from both the United States and the Soviet Union, Iran fought almost entirely alone. This experience of isolation and survival against overwhelming odds became a defining element of the Islamic Republic's identity. The Iran-Iraq War taught Iran's leaders a crucial lesson: in a hostile world, survival depended on self-reliance and military strength. As the country rebuilt after the war's end in 1988, attention turned to developing capabilities that would deter future aggression. Iran's nuclear program had actually begun under the Shah with American assistance, but it had been abandoned during the revolution. In the 1990s, the program was quietly restarted with help from Pakistani scientist Abdul Qadir Khan, who provided crucial centrifuge technology. When Iran's nuclear activities became public in 2002, they triggered a crisis that continues to this day. The United States and its allies accused Iran of seeking to develop nuclear weapons, while Iran insisted its program was purely for peaceful energy production. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khomeini, issued a fatwa declaring nuclear weapons forbidden in Islam. This religious ruling became the foundation of Iran's official position that it neither possessed nor sought to develop nuclear weapons. Unable to resolve the nuclear issue through diplomacy, the United States implemented increasingly severe economic sanctions against Iran. These measures targeted Iran's oil exports, banking system, and international trade, causing significant hardship for ordinary Iranians. The sanctions succeeded in crippling Iran's economy, but failed to change the country's policies. Instead, they strengthened the arguments of hardliners who viewed compromise with America as futile and dangerous. Several attempts at diplomatic resolution have been made over the years, including the 2015 nuclear agreement known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. However, President Donald Trump's withdrawal from this agreement in 2018 and the reimposition of harsh sanctions demonstrated the fragility of any accommodation between the two countries. Today, more than 4 decades after the Shah's fall, the confrontation between Iran and the United States continues to shape Middle Eastern politics. Iran has developed into a significant regional power with influence stretching from Lebanon to Yemen, while America maintains its position as Iran's primary adversary. The 1979 Iranian Revolution remains one of the most significant geopolitical events of the modern era. It transformed a key American ally into its most persistent opponent, reshaped the balance of power in the Middle East, and demonstrated that even the world's most powerful nations cannot always control the forces of historical change. The revolution's legacy serves as a reminder that foreign interference in domestic affairs often produces unintended consequences. America's support for an unpopular ruler ultimately contributed to the rise of a regime far more hostile to American interests than the one it replaced. As tensions between Iran and America continue into the 21st century, the events of 1979 remain as relevant as ever, offering crucial insights into how nations can become enemies and why some conflicts prove so resistant to resolution.
Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more interesting videos.